Welcome back to the Balance Breakdown. Better late than never is what they say, Harry Powell, about this. Some work commitments held us back this week, but not held us back entirely. We were just a couple of days late, but we had to talk about this card, and that's the UFC Noche card from this past weekend. Shrouded in controversy, shrouded with storylines, and we're going to talk about them all in the net over the next hour or so. As always, Harry Powell is here. I'm really looking forward to chatting to him about everything that went on. We have not spoken one word about what happened last weekend, so this is all going to be fresh for us, and I'm really looking forward to it because, like I said, there's plenty to discuss, and we're going to get straight into it, Harry. Let's not even do the card rundown. Let's talk the main event, round 1 to round 5. Let's talk about what happened in the aftermath. And we have the luxury actually this week, Harry, of, normally we'll record this on a Monday, only one day after the card. Now it's we're recording on a Wednesday evening, giving away the timestamps here, but we have a lot more storylines that we can discuss in the aftermath of this fight and what went on. The main event. We discussed a lot of things on the preview show, things that should be changed up by both fighters, and I believe both fighters did change them up, to be honest. And it was a good fight. I believe Alexa Grasso came into the octagon improved. I wouldn't say Valentina came in and improved, but she more so maintained maybe her level that she has showcased in the last couple of fights. What were your thoughts? Do you want to go round by round? You want to go do an overlay on the fight? Let's do round by round. Let's talk round 1 first. What were your thoughts in the early stages of this fight, Harry?
So I thought that Valentina made a strong start. The first blow to land was a really clean left body kick. That left body kick landed quite nicely throughout that first minute and a half of that first round. And Valentina started, I think, very smartly by knowing that Grasso was going to be the aggressor, knowing that the right hand was what Grasso wanted to land, and so was looking to pull counters from the right hand. She was looking to maintain her range and her distance management, and then landed and landed well. There was a moment where Valentina got a little hurt by a Grasso right hand. I was impressed by the initial stuff of the Valentina takedown. However, we did finally see a takedown from Valentina Shevchenko. And I think the takedowns and the level changes were really, really, really prevalent to the Shevchenko game, specifically in part fantastically well did they work for her, but also obviously in that 5th round, and we'll get there. But
and that's what, like, Valentina, that was the kind of one thing that we were zoning in where, that could be improved on by Alexa Grasso, the awareness and stopping the takedown, but also for Valentina heading into the rematch. That was kind of the chink in Alexa Grasso's armor in the first fight. And, Valentina went to it straight away, which, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess,
Absolutely. I will critique Valentina in that first round. She hit the takedown wonderfully, past the guard wonderfully, got into full mount wonderfully well. Grasso did what she needed to do and started to buck and bridge and gave her back in order to try and get up. But Valentina rushed the back take. She rushed the consolidation of the back take. Valentina had time. It wasn't like there was 20 seconds left and she felt like she was going to get under the chin and maybe she could finish it in round 1. No, there was a considerable amount of time that Valentina could have used to solidify the back, and she should have been looking for chokes rather than shots, and she didn't. And so Grasso managed to turn in, she managed to misalign her spine, and she managed to get up immediately and began trading knees in the clinch. I think that there certainly was an element here where Valentina rushed certain positions. There are 2 more moments that I think are prevalent to showing that she was rushing in those ground positions. But I also don't know, and I think this is a big storyline, is they say she broke her hand in round 1. I have no idea when that specifically happened, but I can also totally understand that if the pain is very sharp, and you don't really necessarily making a fist and throwing it might be one thing, but actually gripping on things and
Yeah,
engaging your hand is a completely different thing. And so I
that's the
totally
thing. Yeah.
understand.
Which you kind of need to do, like when you're striking, it's that force that, you know, they'll say that you throw your hand loose, but you want to impact with a clenched fist, and that will up the impact of the shot itself in there. The broken hand was something that I didn't notice throughout the fight. You know, with Rose Namajunas, she had hurt her hand in recent fights and it took away from her game. Valentina, all right, didn't appear. It didn't appear on the night. Maybe it did, but it didn't appear for me watching the fight that it had too much of an impact on Valentina's performance. And I think at that stage, when you damage your hand, it's more of a mental game, Harry.
Yeah, for sure. And I think at this point we know that Valentina is pretty fucking tough mentally. Because I didn't notice throughout the entire fight. She gave nothing away that hand was broken. She gave nothing away that there was any damage. She was throwing that right hand consistently throughout the fight. She was blocking with it. She was using it throughout the entire fight. And so, Jesus, I mean, we know that these fighters are tough. We know that they're very, very strong-willed and strong-minded. But yeah, I was very impressed with her inability to show and unwillingness to show that the damage had taken its toll on that right hand. If we move into the second round, I was again impressed with Grasso's immediate stuffing of the takedown. The thing that I found the most impressive wasn't necessarily that she dropped Valentina, but it was the way in which she dropped her, right? It was that in the exchanges, when they were out in open cage situations and Valentina was controlling the range, most of those exchanges are pretty even. It's very, very difficult to pick them apart. But what Grasso did very well is when she was able to close the distance a little, whether it was on the exit of a clinch or entrance into a clinch, she was doing a really good job at landing impactful shots in those exchanges, in those offbeat moments. Something that we used to mention about Leon Edwards was the really impressive elbow off the clinch with Gunnar Nelson, right? And this blew his eye up and all of this sort of stuff. And it was really, really beginning that sort of immediate moment in that fight really begun us talking about striking in the offbeats. And I thought,
and it's funny enough you mentioned offbeat striking. I had just listened to in Israel Adesanya talking about his fight with Sean Strickland, came out there not so long ago. And he said, actually, it was the offbeat nature of Sean Strickland's 1-2 that caught him in that fight too. And for anyone who doesn't know that, if we're like we were talking about in beat, you know, you'll have your standard 1-2, 1-2, 3, but then you can throw a quick 1-2, then you can throw a jab and then maybe a feint and then your 2. You know, you can. What fighters will try to do if Harry and I were facing off is Harry's going to try and read my timing, what my combinations are going to be. If I stay throwing the same combinations at the same rate, at the same speed, well, then Harry is going to read my strikes. But if I throw a 1-punch combination, then a 3-punch combination, and I'm throwing them at different speeds, that is what we would consider offbeat striking and offbeat combinations. Harry, please continue.
100%. Now, when we mention rushing, I think we have to critique Alexa Grasso in this second round. She drops Valentina with one of those offbeat shots, finds her way out of a clinch. Valentina's cutting an angle to her right, and Grasso just clips her absolutely gorgeously, sends her on the same path that she's already going, but obviously with severe impact to the jaw, right? And Valentina rolls over her own shoulders, builds back up, but Grasso rushes here. She rushes and rushes and rushes, and not panic, but I think that the understanding that she dropped Valentina and the understanding that she didn't want to be in a similar situation that she was in less than 5 minutes ago, where Valentina was chasing her back and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. She wanted to really land some diminishing damage. Because she closed the distance so fast, Valentina was able to immediately use that as a level change and put her on the mat.
Do you think that the actual the punch itself, would you feel it was a little bit of, like, obviously a well-timed punch, but Valentina that was kind of caught square and off balance a little bit as well? Would you feel 100%. That? Yeah. Yeah, because I thought that I wouldn't have imagined. Look, obviously it clipped her, took her off balance, very impactful strike, but I don't think maybe it would have rang her bell, maybe, or anything like that. I think maybe more of an off balance kind of maybe flash of white light in Valentina's kind of movement, but yeah, more kind of a cut or square. But I mean, that's to Alexa Grasso's credit for getting Valentina off square in the first place.
Absolutely. Like when you just watch the way she drops, she doesn't drop at an angle. She drops completely with square hips. And as she immediately rolls over her own shoulders, she is immediately right back up to her feet, right? She's in and aware. I think the shots that land after, because Grasso lands a number of pretty impactful strikes in the immediate aftermath, those I think hurt Valentina. Those might have caused Valentina to find herself in a wobbled situation. But when the guillotine comes in from the level change, and I think this is an interesting moment, because the level change comes in, and I don't know why Grasso holds on to the guillotine. I really don't know, because as she's locking up the guillotine from the level change, Valentina has an arm inside. Now, when we talk about an arm in guillotine, we don't mean the opponent's arm inside. We mean as you're attacking, you have an arm on the other side and your arm is lacing in, and you wrap the guillotine around. Valentina having her own arm inside that quote unquote guillotine meant that there was absolutely no way on earth that Alexa Grasso was going to finish that guillotine. There is just no way that you're going to get, one, enough purchase under the chin to bend the neck, and two, enough pull on that shoulder to be able to really bend it, because Valentina can post into the mat with the hand that's inside and flare her elbow and create a frame. And that's kind of what we saw. And if I'm Alexa Grasso's corner, I am screaming at her to let go of the guillotine and force her way back up, because we know that Valentina has level changed because she was under fire on the feet. So why are we stalling effectively?
You think there might be in a state of maybe shock or surprise from Alexa Grasso that and that can happen in an incident like that. Really, you're right in the middle of the next sequence, and you're kind of probably in your own head thinking, "Oh shit, is this really happening?" Because you visualize, and then sometimes, and it's happened to me as well. When I've been sparring in the past, is that you hurt somebody and you sometimes you can't believe it, because you're battling with yourself and wondering if you have actually the capabilities of doing that now. And I'm sure Alexa Grasso has those capabilities, but sometimes you can get caught up into the moment there.
Absolutely. But the one thing I will give Grasso a lot of credit for is the guard work. I think the fella that she has in her corner is Diego Lopez. Is that his name? The guy that came in on short notice against Movsar Evloev.
Yes.
If his name isn't Lopez, I apologize. But what was vastly impressive about his guard, and I see the replica in Grasso's game, is how active a guard he has. It wasn't a guard where she was trying to get overhooks and underhooks and drag posture and stall and hold in a closed guard. Grasso was landing shots. She was looking for angles. She was actively trying to hurt Valentina from the bottom. And, that's something that we talk about when we speak about Roman Dolidze, Chito Vera. I think we now should add Alexa Grasso to that list, because one thing that was prominent in this fight, and we'll talk about the back take that Valentina had on Alexa Grasso, that the shots and the activity in the guard of Alexa Grasso and when she was in bad positions was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And whilst I think it's obvious that Grasso wins that second round for the initial impactful strike, I also think what bolstered her claim to winning that round were the shots on bottom, because Valentina didn't land much. She landed 2 elbows on the bottom, from the top, and that was in the last sort of 2 or 3 seconds of the round. But Grasso had landed not significant damage, but a lot of volume from that bottom position.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't disagree with that at all. Moving on to round 3, Harry. The fight was kind of starting to take shape at this stage. Wondering if Alexa Grasso could kind of bolster herself and get her kind of live off the confidence of the second round, having dropped Valentina. This was a close round. In its entirety. How did you see it? Maybe not so much about the scoring. We'll keep the scoring talk till the very end. Just your assessment round 3, and if you want to continue on into round 4 too.
Sure. So the snappy right from Grasso was landing really well, but Val was also landing very, very well in their own strike. It was so difficult in a lot of these open cage exchanges to really pick a winner, because Valentina had set her stall out that she wanted to counter the right hand. There were low kicks aplenty. It's very hard to judge impact on low kicks, especially. And this, I think, is one thing that I noticed throughout the fight, and I wrote in my notes for most of the rounds, is Grasso takes shots so well. She no-sells shots so well.
It's the Mexican way, isn't it, Harry? It is the Mexican way.
But one of the things that judges are looking for and how they determine impactful strikes is what the reaction of the opponent is immediately after the strike. And there was a number of shots that you could see that Valentina has planted her feet, her core's rotated, and she cleanly catches Grasso, and Grasso just doesn't move. She just sits in her and she tucks her chin and she takes it. And whilst, let me tell you, those shots would have fucking hurt, Grasso's ability to no-sell them is absolutely a factor here. Anyway, Valentina, really nice takedown again. Really, really nice level change. Her ability to lull Grasso in the first 3 rounds into thinking that we're just in a striking battle and allowing Grasso to sort of fall into a rhythm, and then immediately she feels that the rhythm has fallen into, she level changes and takes her down, was majestic. Brilliant. Absolutely majestic. And I thought that as Grasso rotated out of side control and up into front headlock, and Valentina dove on that guillotine was tight for a couple of seconds. Grasso did a really, really good job of peeling one of the hands off her chin as Valentina got to mount, but for a couple of seconds, that guillotine was very, very tight. You could see that Grasso had started to turn a little bit red, and Valentina's back had started to really arch as she'd really started to get bend on that jaw. But then as Valentina was aware that Grasso was starting to get her hands inside and starting to peel the grips a little bit, you felt and saw the back start to relax a little bit, and Valentina kept the position just to start to think about, what do I do next, right? What am I going to transition to? What's her reaction going to be? And well, the reaction from Grasso was that she was going to explode out of that position. Shevchenko managed to follow the back this time, locks in a body triangle. But this, again, is where I'm going to critique Valentina Shevchenko. If you have a body triangle, and sorry, I will just mention slightly about the scoring. The guillotine scores, right? You're attempting to finish the fight. It's not the fact that you're in the mount. It's the fact that you're trying to finish the fight with a guillotine. And for me, the guillotine is close, and so it scores big. Obviously, it descends as Grasso starts to defend. That's fine. There's no problem with that. But that's a close attempt at finishing a fight, right? It's a diminishing attempt to finish a fight. Fine. As Valentina then chases the back and gets a body triangle, we're not scoring these positions, right? Just because you have a dominant position, it's in sport grappling, a dominant position, it's merely a change of position in MMA. And there was, I think I wrote that there was like 1 minute and 15 seconds that she had left while she was on the back, and she did nothing. She didn't try and choke her. She didn't land any shots. Grasso was just peppering her, absolutely peppering her from the back. And those are shots, right? Those are volume. That's damage. That's fucking damage. It might not be vast damage. It might not be, she might not have broken her nose or broken an orbital or whatever, but she's landing damage when Valentina is not. And so Grasso is winning that position. Now, the thing I don't understand for Valentina is she'd managed to get an inside grip or an inside wrist tie of one of Grasso's hands. So she had a free hand and Grasso had a free hand. And why she isn't just choking her face, why she isn't just locking strangles over the jaw, cross-facing, punching strangles over to ensure that Grasso has to deal with the right hand. The right hand has to be used for Grasso. I don't know. Now, in hindsight, when we find out that the hand is broken, maybe that plays a factor.
100%. Yeah, I'm with you with that, with all of that as well. Yeah, but yeah, you've got to, you can't play with fire in that position. You've got to either work, and it's something that's going to be such an important factor in mixed martial arts over the coming years. Is that we've gone from a stage where you can take a fight down and control a fight when it hits the ground, but you've got to be active. You've got to be active in 2023 mixed martial arts. And that's what the judges, and when you even are in a dominant position, like Valentina was on the back, you've got to be doing something there, or else you're going to leave yourself open for some criticism, or you're going to give the judges a reason to score it against you. I'm totally with you with everything that you said there. Round 4.
Close round. Close round.
I had said round 3 was a close round, but I got that mixed up. It was round 4 that was the close round.
The only thing that I wrote here was some of those knees looked illegal to me. There were moments when, so Valentina shoots, Alexa Grasso sprawls, beautiful sprawl, fantastic sprawl, locks up a front headlock, and she starts landing knees to Valentina's head. There is at least one. I think she landed 5 knees. Some of them were completely legal because Valentina took, for some fucking reason, Valentina took her hands off the mat.
And sometimes you can get like, if I was Alexa Grasso and that, you'll pull up the body so the hand will come up so you can time the knee as well. A good tactic. I like it. But yeah, I was, whilst the majority of them, like we're talking about playing with fire here, you're definitely playing with fire in that position as well, because all it takes is, for the momentum or for the weight to shift onto the hand for Valentina Shevchenko. So look, at the referee didn't call it. You're saying one of them perhaps. There wasn't too much complaints from Valentina. There wasn't too much complaints in general about that sequence. A little bit of chit chat here. All word coming out after the fight is that they were largely considered legal shots by the majority.
Yeah, and I think the one that I would call illegal is probably smack bang in the middle. And so in the moment, as she's just plowing knees into her, especially as it's Herb Dean, right? But it's very difficult to discern if there's an illegal shot there. And I think Herb definitely told Grasso, right? Be careful that that's not a grounded opponent. And as you say, Grasso did the right thing in that she was hoisting Valentina up off the mat. But yeah, if I'm Valentina, just put your fucking knees on the ground, right? Just put your knees on the ground. Like, what are we doing here? As soon as the first knee lands, put your knees on the ground. Make sure that if she throws the next one, it's illegal. Because you have to put the ball in the opponent's court, right? If you're the intelligent defense to that is to put your knees on the ground. If you know that the first knee lands and it's legal, put your own knees on the ground and stop that from happening. But yeah, very, very close round. I was impressed by Grasso moving on and dumping Valentina. It's not often that we see Valentina get taken down. But again, Grasso, she rushes. She grabs the Kimura too early. She allows Valentina to rotate her hips through, and then she ends on bottom.
And I believe that cost her the round and could have very well cost her the fight as well.
The literal last line I have in round 4 is, how do you score that round? Like, question.
So hard. I edged back. Like, I mean, you could look at I edged. We'll talk about the scoring after the fight. Round 5. Let's talk about probably the round that we'll remember for a very, very, very long time. A round that had kind of 2 halves, really. Valentina started well with her jab. Finally, and I really liked and bought into what Sean was saying on the big podcast about maybe a little bit of confidence. And as we've seen the fight go on, I think a mixture of confidence, but also maybe a mixture of maybe at that stage the hand was so numb or the adrenaline was so high that there was no pain being felt at all, where Valentina didn't feel the need. But we had said in the preview show, whoever established the jab in this fight was going to be probably the one that would be successful. And while Alexa started well with her jab, she didn't finish well with her jab. And it was Valentina Shevchenko that was landing hard jabs, and especially at the start of this 5th round, Harry.
I agree. I wrote here, I'll just read out the paragraph I've put. Grasso has started well, as had Valentina. Nothing yet tells me that there's a 10-8 coming. Then I said, oh fuck, that's a big mistake, and we get into the head and arm throw, right? But in that opening fucking 3 minutes, right? Again, it's a well contested fight, well contested. I don't think it's not a blowaway by Valentina by any stretch of the imagination. Grasso is still landing, but I agree that the aggressor was Valentina. Now, I haven't written anything drastic in my notes about that aggression, about the Valentina pulling away, and that's what tells me that it was a close enough round. But I agree that the confidence has started to build in Valentina, right? I think that she realized that the hand wasn't any worse. It hadn't gotten any worse as she was going because she'd thrown it the entire time. She'd managed to get through the grappling exchanges without having to use it drastically for grip. And again, it hadn't failed her in those situations. And so I think that's where she invested the confidence. And I also think she probably knew that it was a close fight, right? Like it was either 2-2 coming in or 3-1 to Valentina.
Well, that's showing your championship experience, in my opinion, to be honest.
Exactly. Now, the mistake. Fucking hell.
Dreadful. Well, talking about things that may have cost people fights, we'll talk about people costing people fights in just a minute, but we talk about the progression of women's mixed martial arts, and we've talked about it with Zhang Weili and a couple of other very, very good and skillful women who are bringing, I feel, women's mixed martial arts to the next level. Valentina, a pioneer of women's mixed martial arts and one of the best to do it as well. A head and arm toss is not going to work in 2023. It's not going to work anymore. And I have no idea why Valentina decided in that moment that it was the right decision. It's worked for her before, but we're talking about new levels of women coming up in the sport right now. And they simply will not allow that to happen, Harry.
So I'll give Valentina a tiny bit of saving grace, right? Grasso made perfect reactions. And the only thing that I will say, because I completely agree with you, by the way, that I do wonder from the specific angle that we were looking at it, Valentina's head is way higher than it usually is when she's looking for those throws. And she didn't actually step her right leg through across the hips of Grasso to try and throw her. So what I wonder is whether she was looking to drive her head to the tricep and pull Grasso's head down and take a back body lock or something similar. But because she took the grip, right? She took the grip, and Grasso knows the counters, countered absolutely gorgeously. Just backstepped, cut the angle on Valentina. If Valentina was pulling, she just dropped her weight onto the floor. Alexa Grasso limp arms her arm out. Christ, sorry. And then entered back. And immediately my brain says, oh, fuck, here we go.
Harry had his head in his hands at that moment there, I would imagine.
Absolutely. So my next paragraph is 120 left on the clock. Lots and lots of shots here from Grasso. To be fair, lots of these shots are on the arms. Grasso then goes for a choke, and I've said this choke isn't deep. Val's spine is already misaligned, and she's already fighting the hands. So that doesn't score drastically for me. Then I said way, way, way more shots. There are some to the arms and some to the bicep, but a really clean one lands to the nose of Valentina, which is now bleeding. I said the face crank at the very, very end is never going to tap a champion, but it scores, right? You're attempting to land damage. You're attempting to finish a fight. So, okay, my last thing is, okay, you score that round to Grasso, no problem.
Yeah, no problem. No problem, a lot of people said when that fight was over. I'm just getting ready for what's incoming. Harry's going to take a drink of water here because it's about to get spicy in here. Rounds 1 to rounds 4 are pretty straightforward. Round 5 was pretty fucking straightforward too. If we're going
round 5, easiest round to score.
Yeah. I would have it as myself. I would agree with Salamado on his scoring of the fight, and that was everybody, like the whole everyone was on song here. To be honest, this was like 1 point away from being 3 perfect scorecards for the fight, in my opinion. I don't know, there is an argument for an Alexa Grasso 48-47 too. I am not going to argue against that whatsoever.
I agree with that.
Me personally, I had it scored after round 5, 48-47 to Valentina Shevchenko. That was my score.
Mhm.
Waiting for the scorecards to be announced, there was two things that caught my eye. Number one thing is that Sean Shelby was standing in the octagon and he was holding the Mexican version of the title. And I was like, okay, fair enough. Then the second thing that caught my eye is Bruce Buffer got into the ear of Sean Shelby, apparently to probably tell him the score, and it read, what the fuck? That was the words that came out of Sean Shelby's mouth in the octagon. And I was like, oh my word, what is going on here? And in the moments that followed, Harry, once we got the score out, one for Shevchenko, two for Shevchenko, and then Mike Bell was the one who scored round 5 at 10-8, which turned it into a draw. I thought I was after missing something, to be honest. It was I could not wait until the scorecards were announced to see how they could. I thought it was a mistake. I was kind of questioning my own kind of opinion on the fight. I was like, do I need to watch this back? Like, I don't understand. Like, there wasn't a 10-8 in there. I was like, is there a 10-8? Where is this coming from? Round 5, Mike Bell scored at a 10-8. Now, I completely understand how difficult it is to be a judge, and I empathize with judges a lot. And we have on many occasions on this podcast, Harry. I cannot sympathize with this because this is so egregious that I've been thinking about the proper word to use. It's just disgraceful. I cannot even, I still don't even have the words. We're 4 days out from this fight now. I still don't have the words to kind of wrap my head around how somebody could score that 5th round at 10-8 round. Like you said, and in your notes, the most important sentence I feel in this, at 1 minute and 20 seconds was when the head and arm toss was countered by Alexa Grasso. So that means we're judging this 10-8 round on, look, it was a little bit competitive at the start of the round, but I thought Valentina Shevchenko was winning that with her jab on the feet. So I would have scored the first half of the round for Valentina Shevchenko. But obviously the work that Alexa Grasso did was enough for her to win the round, in my opinion, but only win the round by 10-9 margin. Like, I don't know, Harry, maybe you can kind of put this into words a little bit better. I think it's probably one of the worst scored rounds that I have probably ever watched, to be honest. I've been trying to think back. I'm not trying to jump on the bandwagon of outrage here, but I like watching back that round. I cannot fathom a 10-8. I cannot fathom it at all.
I agree with you. Look, I'm just going to run through the scorecards of Sal D'Amato and Junichiro Kamijo. So both score round 1 to Shevchenko. I think we're all in agreement for that.
Yeah.
Right?
And Mike Bell did perfectly, scored that for Shevchenko as well. We're all in agreement.
Round 2, they all scored exactly the same. 10-9 to Grasso. That's when she dropped her. No problem. Absolutely agree with that.
Agree with that too.
They all score the next round, 10-9 for Valentina Shevchenko. I think we can agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Round 4, both Mike Bell and Sal D'Amato score the round 10-9 to Valentina Shevchenko. I have absolutely no problem with Kamijo's card of 10-9 to Grasso.
None at all. No problem at all. No
You want
problem
to
at
go
all.
that way? That's fine by me. No,
We said that ourselves, even breaking down the fight. I mean, it's such a close round, like such a close round. It's one of those rounds that we probably watched back where I can't remember the one. Maybe it was Aljamain or Jan or something like that, where it was like I've watched the round back 3 times and I've scored it 3 different ways. And that's one of those rounds, so close. Round 5, then Harry.
Round 5, Sal D'Amato scores 10-9 Grasso. Kamijo scores 10-9 Grasso. And then we have this absolute duck, right? So Sal D'Amato's card is 48-47 Shevchenko. Kamijo's card is 48-47 Grasso. Both fine cards, in my opinion. No problem whatsoever with it. And then we have this absolutely fucking egregious card. And look, I agree with your statement. There is a very, very, very difficult job burdened to those judges. The problem, though, is that these judges don't just get slotted into a main event for nothing.
No, that's my biggest problem here with this, is that this is a main event title fight and there were serious implications. Okay, every fight is important, but you make a little error like this on the undercard, it doesn't have the same kind of ripple effect that it will have on the result of this fight. And we'll talk about that ripple effect in just a moment. It's just craziness.
I agree. I just, you're right. The ripple effect is insane, but just think about, I don't know what to say. Right. Like,
so hard, like, because it's the most, when we disagree with scorecards or we see egregious cards in the past, what it has kind of been partnered with is maybe a lack of inexperience. Like the guy who scored in crazy fights in Texas that only had done 4 UFC fights in the past. Okay, he's not experienced enough. He shouldn't be in that position. But with Mike Bell has been a prominent judge for many years and a very good judge with lots of good scorecards too. And one looking at the judges for this fight, would feel, they're going to get the best of the best there, but we simply didn't. A bad time to have a mistake like that. I mean,
I think the other thing that I dislike about this, right, is the amount of heat that judges get online, right? Whoever it is, whether it's the absolute cream of the crop or whether it's a guy that maybe isn't as well known or isn't as prominent, right? The amount of heat that they get for doing their jobs correctly, by the way, is insane. When you pull a card like that, on a show like that, in an event like that, in a fight like that, with the magnitude that it is, if anything, you are undoing all of the incredible work done by judges week in, week out at the highest level. 100%. And you're demeaning the use of a 10-8, right? There's another, and we'll talk about it, Josephine Knutsson versus Mann, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mike Bell scores all 3 rounds for all 3 rounds 10-8. The other 2 judges don't score round 1 10-8. Brian Miner goes 10-9 through the whole thing, and we'll talk about that because I think that's a silly card as well. But even the media, not one person scored it 30-24. So yeah. Mike Bell...
And it seems to be a problem with Mike Bell that we're handing out 10-8s too easy. He's, this was introduced and we've seen a lot of these cards, but then we've seen a little bit of an adjustment in the cards after a couple of complaints. Dana White being very outspoken about it. They had meetings about it and they've readjusted. They're having another meeting right now to a seminar to discuss 10-8s as well. The Nevada State Athletic Commission has announced that it's probably taking place at this point. But I mean, it's all well and good to do it in the aftermath, but the damage has already been done. Mm-hmm. And it hurts the sport. It changes lives. And I wish it didn't happen. I was going to say it shouldn't happen, but I just wish it didn't happen. And I'm absolutely shocked that it happened from a card from Mike Bell. But, the only thing that we can say in this sequence before we move on, Harry, is that hopefully this error brings in a little bit more change, because okay, we're going to have egregious scorecards. I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we thought it wasn't going to be that way, but we've got to get them right for title fights. We've got to get them right at the very top of the card. There's too much at stake here for errors like that to happen. Okay, a 10-9 either which way, look at round 4. It was the opinion of 3 different judges, had different opinions on it. You might have a different opinion. I might have a different opinion, and that is okay. But there's no excuse, and there's no coming back. Well, there is coming back from a scorecard like that, but it's like maybe, what can you do? Maybe you can't say take Mike Bell out of there because you're taking a pretty good judge out of the scene there, and we don't have too many of them. But it's like, I don't know how we kind of handle this or what else there is to say. Would you like to round us off on this, Harry?
Yeah, so I'll make a human argument, right? And then I'll make a sporting argument. The human argument is, personally, I think Mike Bell had a horrendous night, right? We'll go through all the fights that he judged. I don't think he had a good night at all, right?
Yeah.
Now, he's a human, and humans are prone to just having off nights, right? Mike Bell that day could have gone in and had a horrendous day. He could have lost a family member. He could have woke up on the wrong side of the bed. He might not have got enough sleep. He might have been ill. He might have been this. He might have been that. And to your point, there's
well, in my to be not to be too kind of cruel here in that situation, if you are in that mindset, you need to remove yourself from any scenarios that you're going to be in. Maybe that's not an option. I don't know.
That's my point, right? Like, the point I was going to make is there's such a shallow, as you've already stated, such a shallow pool of really, really, really good judges that when it comes to an event like this, with the magnitude and the prominence, you need the best of the best, right? And so on short notice, can you draft somebody in? One of the guys that's already on the judging card, can you draft him in? Maybe. I don't know. But either way, Mike Bell is prone and is allowed, because he's a human, to have an off night. The difference, though, and the sporting argument, is that all these fighters have the same situation. They've gone through a weight cut. They've gone through a hard fight camp. And now they've got to go in and throw bones at another human. Just because they've got an off night, one of the things we were talking about just last week is champions showing a will to win, finding a way to win.
Mm-hmm.
You can be having an off night and you can find a way to win. Valentina Shevchenko certainly tried to do it, right?
Yeah.
And yet, if you are tasked with a job and you have the skills with which to enact your job, you must be professional. And some of the cards turned in by Mike Bell on Saturday night were not professional.
One last question before we move on. Do you think it helps or hinders? It would help or hinder the situation if we were to get either a statement from the Nevada State Athletic Commission or a statement from Mike Bell, just a couple of paragraphs with a brief explanation?
So it's very difficult because for Mike Bell, the answer is transparency, right? That is the answer. The difficulty, though, with transparency is people already have a stereotyped view of judges and judging. And so if Mike Bell comes out on Twitter and says, sure, look, here's a 15-minute video or 25-minute video of me breaking down why I scored the round. I'll do a watch along. I'll record a watch along, right? And I'll break down why I scored these rounds this way. The amount of vitriol that is going to be returned Mike Bell's way is absolutely indefensible in and of itself. And so why on earth would Mike Bell choose unto himself after making a mistake? Fine. Why would he bring it upon himself to then further cement that mistake with the amount of vitriol that would undoubtedly be leveled at him in a completely indefensible way? Now,
it's just I would look at it as taking a little bit of ownership for it, where it's like we can, a lot of people are saying, oh, why isn't he coming out? Like, judges are not allowed to talk to the media. They're not allowed to do that. The state athletic commissions don't allow them to do that. And that's, that's for basically the reasons that Harry just stated there. Now, you don't want to create more kind of drama and more pressure on it. But, I think this one deserved it, to be honest. And I don't come out and say that too much. I think this one, there's a difference between, us acknowledging the mistake and then, at least having it with Mike Bell coming out, saying, I had an off night, like you said. It happens. I apologize. It shouldn't be the case, but it is. And, at least you can kind of say, well, he's accepted some acknowledgement and responsibility for that scorecard. But I know that it's super difficult. Me, I don't die on either hill. If they want to do it, they want to do it. And if they don't, they don't. I understand the reasons for them not coming out and speaking to the public. I don't think that they would have to be very careful to get a fair shake on what they come out and who's going to give them that fair shake is another good question as well. But it's disappointing, Harry, because it just takes away from a fantastic fight. It takes away from a fantastic event. And I blame Sean Sheehan because he went to bed and he wasn't watching live.
Fair play to you. I think the last thing I'll say is look at the way that women's mixed martial arts has been accepted into sort of the fabric of MMA, right? At the very, very start, when it was coming around, there were lots of people that were distasteful in their opinion of women fighting in the UFC or fighting in MMA, full stop. Now, in 2023, we're having cards headlined by female title fights. And so, you know, if the State Athletic Commission, just all of them, were happy and willing to take a bit of heat for maybe a year, 2 years, if every single fight card, every single judge were to turn in an explanation, or as we know that they do, there is a judges meeting after the event, right? And they talk about their scorecards and they go, if those were publicized and fans were able to watch them or media was able to watch them, then when it becomes just part of the conversation and part of the rhetoric, the level with which people would level vitriol at those judges would diminish. It would decrease because there would be such a resounding and continuous feedback loop, because the judges would be just saying the fucking same thing all the time, right? You get Sal Diamato, Eric Colon, Ben Cartledge. You get all of these guys in a room every week at every event, and they all say the same things because they all fucking score the cards the same every time.
Yeah.
When an egregious card comes in, people would be like, oh, that's a fucking weird one, rather than this vitriol that's stereotypically set against judges. If you just break the barrier down, and sure, if you want to do it so that nobody can comment on posts, right? Or you make it available and everyone can watch it, but you just can't say anything. You can't quote tweet it. You can't this, you can't that, you can't the next thing. Fine. From the technology perspective, you protect those people however you want to. But I do think that transparency is the way forward, right? Generally in sport. And
some level of it, Harry. That's all we're asking. Just some level. We don't expect full-on press conferences after each event, but like some level of acknowledgement needs to happen. And I feel that that's going to better the sport and better kind of put a better understanding on the judging criteria and what judges need to go through. Like, you know, when we can personalize these guys, some of the most beneficial conversations that I won't even say that I've been a part of. I've been in the room at the California State Athletic Commission meetings where the judges have the opportunity and everybody gets together and scores fights and then explains why. And I've heard from the horse's mouth in those meetings from certain judges that have scored, and it's actually benefited me a hell of a lot in understanding the mindset of a judge and what they have to kind of counteract as well. And, you know, I feel very lucky to be a part of those. And I feel if we introduced something like that, maybe a little bit more often to the general public, just maybe a recording of one of those meetings, or like you said, a recording of maybe the debrief after an event. I feel, you know, it's not too much to ask, to be honest. It really isn't. Whether it'll happen or not, that's yet to be said. One last question before I go, and you can answer real quickly. Normally we'll talk about what's next. You know, given Dana White's comments and everybody else's comments, last night after the Contender Series, Dana White said, you know, Valentina's hand will take 3 months to rehab. She'll be back then, and they're aiming to do the rematch in Mexico next year. Do you agree, or do you disagree with that?
Yeah, give me that. No problem.
Yeah. I think it's fair. I think given the circumstances, it needs to happen. And I think the buzz that this fight has created, it would be foolish not to put that on. Now, that is very unfortunate on the likes of Erin Blanchfield and the rest of the women. But look, we could let a man in Firo. Let's put Blanchfield against Firo, Shevchenko versus Grasso down in Mexico, and let's have a good old-fashioned beat down south for the 125-pound division. Woo, well, 49 minutes in, and we'll go to the co-main event. Kevin Holland versus Jack Della Maddalena. Big point of conversation we had on the preview show, Harry. If Kevin Holland shows up, this could be a good fight. Do you think he showed up? Do you think this was a good fight?
I think he showed up. I really do.
I think he did. I think he did too, and I think he showed up to showcase the best of his abilities, and which wasn't enough. And I think that is the kind of stop sign on the crossroads of Kevin Holland's skill set within the UFC. I think, you know, on another night he might have been able to pull it out of the fire, but generally speaking, this is kind of the level of performance that we're getting from Kevin Holland. And when he is asked particular questions, he doesn't have the answer to them. And it was punches and bunches from Jack Della Maddalena that won him this fight, in my opinion. Whereas Kevin Holland maybe was a little bit hesitant, more hesitant than I would have liked for him to maybe bite down on the gum shield and really throw himself into the trenches here. And I feel, you know, Jack Della Maddalena definitely had that in him, but he didn't really need to go into the trenches in this fight, Harry. I thought it was a very good performance against a very tricky opponent that other fighters might have lost against.
So I disagree a little bit. I actually think they both had great performances. I just think Della Maddalena is just a cut above. I think that Kevin Holland turned out one of the career best performances he's had. He was smart. He was intelligent. Yeah, okay. I'll critique him for the back turns and we'll get to that. But he realized early that Della Maddalena was going to try and chop at the legs. He realized early that Della Maddalena was going to go to the body. He realized early that Della Maddalena's defensive work was really, really good, right? And so in the first round, he ate a lot of leg kicks, he ate a lot of body shots, and he ate a lot of counters. Fine, no problem. Then in round 2, he started to make adjustments. And one of the adjustments I really liked from Kevin Holland, and we'll get to Della Maddalena, but one of the adjustments I really liked from Kevin Holland was as Della Maddalena would throw the right low kick, Holland would see it coming, would essentially allow Della Maddalena to land the kick as Kevin Holland was chambering a side kick and then launch a side kick into him. That was wonderful because Della Maddalena immediately was like, oh, fuck. Well, now I can't throw that low kick because I then can't come in and break the distance because he's going to side kick me and push me away. And those super long legs are going to push me backwards. I don't think it's a damaging kick, right? It's not a kick that is going to break a rib, or it's not a kick that's going to wind you or anything like that. But it's a jamming technique that means Della Maddalena can't get to where he wants to, which is inside the pocket where he's landing those shots on bunches. The second adjustment that Kevin Holland made that I thought was really, really good was he would just start grabbing at the right hand. And as he grabbed at the right hand, he would either pull it down and land a jab over the top because he has longer reach, or as he brings it down, he would land another side kick or a low kick or a right hand down the middle. I was impressed with Kevin Holland's ability to wait for Della Maddalena. And there was a moment in that second round where Maddalena realized that as he was throwing shots in bunches, Kevin Holland wasn't trying to counter during the combination and instead was using the Philly shell.
Mm-hmm.
Go on.
Go ahead. No, I feel that was that's a very good read, and I got that too. But Kevin Holland's lack of want to kind of fire off and counter, I feel that he bought into that a little bit too much because, you know, he was creating those feints, he was creating those openings, but there just wasn't enough shots coming in the other direction for me, to be honest. It was, the output could have been a lot better. And while he did make adjustments, I think that he wasn't willing to really fucking bite down and why don't you try and take the fight down or give a couple of different looks? I felt that, like, this is why we might be slightly in disagreement here. And look, I'm a fucking guy that said that Kevin Holland could be a potential future champion in the middleweight division when he was on the come up. But it's like, how long can you play to the tune of Jack Della Maddalena? And I think Kevin Holland played to his tune a little bit too much, whereas that he had to do that, but he kind of banked on that kind of style of fighting a little bit too much, which ultimately ended up costing him. He didn't win any round in the fight, I don't believe.
He did on Mike Bell's scorecard, and he did on the other two scorecards as well. He won.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was an egregious statement there. Just to pull that within there.
This is kind of what I'm talking about. That second round, he looked good, and he didn't play to the tune of Della Maddalena, and he waited on the end of the counters and landed big shots, and that's what reduced the volume on Della Maddalena's side. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason why I think that Maddalena's performance was just a cut above was because Jack went in round 1 and just did Jack things, closed the distance, landed loads of leg kicks, beat the fuck out of his body, came up top, looked fantastic in that first round. Second round, Kevin Holland made some adjustments, but the third round, Maddalena came out and made more of his own adjustments, right? The adjustments he made are He was then going elbows. He was ripping to the body. He was waiting for Kevin Holland's counter to come, and he was countering the counter. We weren't now in a cat and a mouse game. Della Maddalena had realized that there were two options for Kevin Holland. The first was to counter mid combination, and Holland had disbanded of that in round one. The second one was to counter at the end of combinations. And so Jack then waited for that counter and counted his own counter, right? And that, I think, is where we're really seeing the beauty of Della Maddalena's game.
Mm-hmm.
I have a critique on both sides. And the critique on Maddalena's side is Kevin Holland turned his back 3 times. Not once did Jack just pick him up with a back body lock and put him on the floor. You don't even have to go down to ground with him. You can just dump him and then just look at him and say, you're being a fucking idiot. He didn't try and sweep his legs from out underneath him. He merely just loaded up big lunch boxes and went to town, right? And Kevin Holland used his Philly shell well to cover up and not take too much damage. And for Kevin Holland as well, the guy that speaks so highly of his own grappling, I saw 1 takedown attempt.
That's a big problem for me. That's what I mean. Is like, yeah, look at it. If I'm being honest, the fight was a lot closer than I can remember it, looking at the scorecards and listening to you, if I'm being completely honest there. But it's like there's certain moments where I'm looking at what can you do here? And it was like, for me, the majority of the fight, it looked like Jack Della Maddalena was happy to be in the positions that he was in, and that's just a striking battle. What you got to do is you got to ask those questions of Jack Della Maddalena. We haven't had anybody to ask those questions for him. And Kevin Holland, I feel, with his skill set, could have asked those questions. Like, very good grappler. And even if, like you said, it's not about just taking the fight down, it's giving those looks to try and take your opponent off his game. And look at it was Jack Della, like a very good win for Jack Della Maddalena. I'm coming on hard here with Kevin Holland, but I critique him because I feel he could be so much better than he's showcased. And it was a pretty good performance from him, but one that kind of leaves me wanting a little bit more, or expecting a little bit more from a fighter with the caliber of Kevin Holland, where I just felt that he played into Jack Della Maddalena's kind of game a little bit too much, and was happy to play a tit for tat battle. But you're not going to win that battle when you're only throwing less shots than your opponent, per se. Maybe that's the way I can explain it. The scorecards, Mike Bell scored it for Kevin Holland. You don't agree with that at all. Either would I, to be honest. Eric Colin had it 29-28. Saldamato had it 29-28. Jack Della Maddalena. Mike Bell 29-28 to Kevin Holland. And there proves your point of a bad night for Mike Bell in that fight as well. Any other thoughts on this before we move on? We'll rattle through the rest of this card as quickly as we can. What would you like to see next for JDM?
Ian Gary.
No.
And Paul Hughes, obviously.
Paul Hughes. Well, do you think he deserves Ian Gary? Do you think, like, you've tried to match make Ian Gary with people in between rank 10 and rank 15 for the last couple of fights, if I can remember on this? Why do you want to see Ian Gary in those style of matchups? Would you feel that Ian Gary has proven and taken those fights and competed to a level where he doesn't really need to do that at this stage of his career?
Oh, for sure. I just love the matchup.
You just want to see the matchup. Yeah,
I don't shit about rankings for that one.
Yeah, you just want to see. I think Ian Gary destroyed him, to be honest. Yeah. That would be my honest opinion. I think.
Let me see it.
I think there's going to be tough tests for Jack Della Maddalena. I am still high on Jack Della Maddalena. I'm not as high on Jack Della Maddalena as I would have been 1 year ago. But it only takes one fight and it only takes one performance for me to change my mind. And I don't want to belittle the win that he had, because Kevin Holland is a tricky guy to fight. He is a very tricky guy to fight. Dangerous opponent. And Jack Della Maddalena handled it. There was maybe spells in round 2, but even at that, Harry, there was not a moment that there wasn't a moment where I thought, oh shit, Kevin Holland might win this. To be honest, I always felt that Jack Della Maddalena was in the driving seat in that fight. If it's Ian Gary, if it's not Ian Gary, let's get Jack Della Maddalena against the top 10 opponent in the welterweight division. I think we can both agree on that.
Yeah, I mean, the realistic matchup is Vicente Luque.
Oh, my boy Vicente, you're not going to do that to me, are you?
I agree with you that I'm high on Jack Della Maddalena, but I expected much more. I
I
expected
did too. I did
much
too.
performance.
I think Ian Gary. I think Ian Gary goes in there and absolutely decimates a guy like Kevin Holland. To be honest, and it wasn't
Kevin
yeah.
Holland. Oh my god, yeah, forget it. But I think the reason why I picked Vicente Luque as like the actual matchup is he's going to grapple. He's going to
Yeah.
grapple and he's going to hit you hard. And
I think we have the luxury of knowing, like, we could be dealing with Jack Della Maddalena, whereas that we just don't know yet because we haven't seen. I think we have seen snippets of Ian Gary in the past, and we know how good his grappling is, and you hear stories from the gyms and this and that and the other, and we can buy into all of those facts. We don't know, and we don't have that close look at Jack Della Maddalena, and it could be a thing. Vicente Luque could fucking try and take him down. He could sprawl on his head, shoot to the back, take his back and lock in a rear naked choke, and then we're off to the races here. And I'd be like, Ian Gary versus Jack Della Maddalena for the title in the next fight, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm glad that you're in agreement, because my overarching thought on that fight was I'm not as high on the skill set and the capabilities of Jack Della Maddalena against the elite of the elite in the welterweight division just yet. But like I said, opinions change fight by fight, and our opinion will have changed of Rahul Rosas Jr., who competed against Terence Mitchell in the next fight on the card. Which, I mean, when I talk about opinions being changed, I mean, we're not going to get too excited here, but it was a test for Rahul Rosas Jr., a winnable fight for Rahul Rosas Jr., and a fight that he did very well to go out there and get to finish with relative ease. Now, Terence Mitchell is not going to be winning any awards for Fighter of the Year anytime soon. But you mean I would kind of assess a fight like that as that Rahul Rosas Jr. went out and did what he should have done against a guy of that kind of level and skill, and he got the knockout and he got the finish when he mounted him after the fact. And I think, I want to see Rahul Rosas Jr. fight these level of fights for the next good while.
I agree, but I wasn't impressed. I think the moment swallowed Rosas Jr. a little bit. His mom was there. It's Mexican Independence Day. And don't get me wrong, when he landed beautifully well. But he was just throwing bowling balls like there.
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
see
not
him
going to last forever.
I didn't see improvements. And when you're given, and because I agree with you, give him Terence Mitchell the next 5 fights, no problem, right? Absolutely no problem whatsoever. But the reason why you're being given these matchups is so that you can go out, yes, get the finish, get the knockout, but you can also show your improvements. You can show your skills. You can show the things that you've been working on in between fights in the gym. And I am almost certain that his coaches did not want to see him winging overhand rights with his left hand absolutely nowhere near his chin, his hips square, his feet all over the place. I am almost certain he did not want to see those things. And so I get it. Rosas Jr. came out. He's fucking 13 years old and it's Mexican Independence Day and he needs to get a finish in front of his crowd. I get that. I totally understand that. But I also think that this fight will go down in his legacy, right? Has been, he finished a guy in the first round and it was super quick and it was inside 2 minutes and whatever. But this, to me, gives me nothing new on Rosas Jr. The next fight out, whoever it is, keep him at the same level. Again, no problem. But I want to see everything tighter. Everything. I need to see a more mature, more cultured performance from him.
We might not get that maturity for a couple of years. That's the problem. And that's why he needs the UFC to look after him, and he needs his team to look after him, because that kid wants to go out and take on the world. But, you've got to kind of nurture the talent that you have there. And there is talent there. But I agree with you. It was a little bit wild. It was a little bit reckless. And it was a tactic and a skill set that wouldn't get the job done against a higher level opponent. So that's why I was like, cool the jets. Let's slowly ease this guy in. He's 18 years of age. We've got plenty of time. But yeah, he went 100 miles an hour. I think that's the way Sean kind of described it on the big podcast. He went 100 miles an hour, but you go 100 miles an hour, you're going to run out of gas. And I think that's the case for Rahul Rosas Jr. Throw him in there against someone of a similar level in his next fight, and let's see what happens. Daniel Zellhuber, Christian Giagos. This was a belter of a fight. Giagos got him early. Zellhuber had to compose himself, get back in the fight. He did so, landed some nice shots on the feet. The submission came by an anaconda choke in the second round. I was impressed. Harry, with Zellhuber. I mean, not a perfect performance, but what we've seen from him that maybe, we hadn't seen before is that he has the ability to compose himself when things don't start the way and the fight isn't running the way he would have expected it to go. How did you feel about his performance?
I agree. I think you summed it up perfectly. I was super impressed with how quick he got the tap from the anaconda as well. Like, Jesus.
Really he's got long limbs, and they're nearly tailor made for those kind of submissions, really, aren't they?
Absolutely agree. From that front headlock, I bet he's dangerous in the gym. Dangerous in the gym from those spots. But yeah, I mean, he looked like, again, he was coming out just a little bit too fast in that first round. And Giagos, okay, he's not a world beater, but he's a veteran and he's been around this sport for a long time. And yeah, he dropped him, caught him really, really clean. And I think Giagos probably could have done a little bit better of a job of landing damage. And I'm really trying to keep the pressure on Zellhuber. But Zellhuber, as you said, good job of composing himself. And when he sprawled and got to that immediate immediate anaconda, I was like, oh shit.
So quick, man, like so quick, because it was almost like he was setting the arms while he was sprawling at the same time. Like he's just like, that tells me that he's been drilling that like a motherfucker, to be honest. He's been drilling that, and maybe that's the kind of style that he's looking to try and create in there. He wants to frustrate people on the feet. He wants to land those big shots. He wants his opponent to push and shoot in for that takedown, where he can kind of I wouldn't even call it opportunistic. I call that a proper setup. It's him recognizing the takedown and acting on it. And it was a beautiful anaconda choke, really, in the end.
Agreed.
Who would you like to see him next?
I don't know is the answer, because I still don't know. I don't know who he is. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I don't know whether we can just chuck him into fun fights. I don't know whether we've got a guy that maybe could make a little bit of a run and possibly look at a ranking next to his name in the future. I just don't know. Like, what do you think?
I think the same. I'm like, I flirted with the idea of a Dan Hooker type, but I think Dan Hooker might be a little bit too soon for him. Like, I mean, the two of their body types, him and Dan Hooker's, are quite similar. I think maybe another test outside of the rankings for him, one of the upper kind of echelon guys outside of the rankings per se. A name doesn't spring to mind to me right now either. Like, Dan Hooker is one, but I don't know whether we want to give him that yet, especially after Dan's last performance, which was pretty good. I think he deserves a name, maybe an unranked name that we all know and recognize, and we'll see what happens. 14-1 right now. We've got a little bit of time with him. He's 24 years of age, so we've got plenty of time to develop here. So we don't want to get excited and trust them into the rankings yet, because, it's killer's row up there in the top 15 of the lightweight division. So I think, another one or two fights against, good names, maybe guys who are in the rankings that have just fell out of the rankings. Maybe a Dan Hooker, a Rafael Dos Anjos or something like that. I mean, Dos Anjos is up at welterweight now, but it'll be interesting to see what the UFC done with them, because we might have one here. If he can develop in the right way and he gets the right fights. I mean, he seems like a tricky guy. He still is a little bit green in areas, I feel, but at 24, you've got all the time in the world to develop your skill set.
Agreed.
Kyle Nelson, I was very happy to see him get the win. Any thoughts on that fight? Unanimous decision win for Canada's Kyle Nelson against Fernando Padilla in the 145-pound division. Good fight, this.
Yeah, really good fight. I actually disagreed with the scorecards. That could be that I just scored it incorrectly, but I thought it was a really close fight, and I scored some of those rounds to Padilla. I thought he did some of the better work in some of those rounds, but when I watched it back, I think this is a Chito Vera performance, right? Where Padilla landed lots and lots of volume, but Nelson just hit him really fucking hard. Like, just hit him really, really fucking hard. The name for Nelson, by the way, is, can he go back and avenge the Billy Quarantillo fight? That's, for me, the question. Let's do the fight again.
Is Billy Q even still in the UFC?
Is he not in the UFC? Is he? I thought he was back in the UFC now.
I don't know. I
thought he only fought last month. He beat Damon Jackson.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, then we're good. We're good. I don't know. Maybe I was just getting mixed up there. But yeah, that's it. That's the fight. That's it. I like it. We won't spend too much time on that, Harry. We'll move on to Lupi Godinez against Elise Reed. Clear clear kind of separations in skill set here in this fight, but Lupedina Godinez went in there and put on a show. It was a fantastic performance for her, and she got the job done in style.
This is the one we needed. This is the one we needed, right? I lamented her last two performances where she stood in the pocket with people that she could easily have dominated in the grappling exchanges and chose not to, chose to win and eke out like really close decisions, and worked on her skill set, whatever. For whatever reason she chose to be in those pockets, she was. And against Elise Reed, she just went out and absolutely trucked her. From pillar to post, it was a domination. And this is exactly the type of performance you need if you're Lupe Godinez, because now we can't be playing anymore. She's not of the age that we can be playing anymore. We absolutely need to be going in and we need to be decimating our opponents if we can do. And that's what she did to Elise Reed. And I think for me, I have a name immediately. If you want a name now,
let's go for it.
The name is Tabitha Ricci.
Yes, it's a great shout. That is a great shout. Yeah, I like it. I think that's what we should do. And what do you think about maybe Lupetina's kind of progression up to 115-pound division? She needs to build on this performance. She needs to kind of showcase it against a fighter like Tabitha Ricci. Me, I like to speculate. I like to think ahead. I can see her being a stalwart in the top 10 of the division. I still need to see a little bit more for me to kind of be confident that she can go on a title run or actually, put herself into title contention. But she's definitely heading in the right direction.
I agree. I think all the skills are there. It's just whether she can put it together. It seems to me, I need to see that the IQ has matured and that she sticks to the game plans. Because if the game plans are to go in and have, split decision wins over Cynthia Calvillo and to put a relative beating on Emily Ducote, who again, not a great fighter, we're not going to be looking at high level rankings. But if she can put everything together like she did against Elise Reed, she's a fucking force. She's an absolute force. And so it's all about what she is willing to do. If she's willing to adopt a game plan that puts her in a position that allows her to go out and be as dominant as she can be, she'll beat loads of ladies, loads of them.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Moving on to the middleweight division, or is it the welterweight division? It is the middleweight division. Roman Kopylov picked up his fourth finish in a row, taking out Josh Fremd with a lovely liver shot in the second round. I was impressed. I mean, you're going out there, you're getting your fourth win in a row. He's finishing guys and probably deserves, like I said, either a name at middleweight or maybe a shot at the top 15 as well. How do you feel? You aren't the biggest fan of Roman Kopylov. You said verbatim, not to throw you under the bus, you didn't rate him. I respect your opinion. Do you still feel that way? Did you see anything in this fight that might have changed that opinion a little bit?
Not really. Josh Fremd's not a good fighter. He's just not. 11-3 going in is a similar enough record to Kopylov. Kopylov is by far a better fighter than Josh Fremd in an already relatively weak UFC middleweight division. But I still just think he spams the same things. He just has very, very specific elements to his game. And I need to see those tested before I turn a page on that leaf, right? The leaf of that page. But I need to see him tested on the ground. I need to see him tested really standing. I really need to see somebody that can force him out of the southpaw cadence that he's in. And if we put him in there with the guy that he had, and the name, by the way, is Anthony Hernandez. It's Fluffy Hernandez for me.
Oh yeah, give me that. That is an amazing matchup.
If he goes in and he puts Anthony Hernandez away or beats him decisively, no problem, my friend. I'm looking. No problem. Yeah. I'm looking. No problem. I'm looking. I need beating Alessio Di Chirico is a solid win. Right? It's a solid win, but he's a European level fighter. Going in and beating Punahele Soriano, again, he'll throw his chin in the way of anything. Claudio
he's finishing these guys. We have to give him a little bit of credit. He's finishing these guys. We've seen plenty of other fighters go in and struggle against this level of fighter and not get the job done. I think, we have to kind of compliment him a little bit in 4 finishes in a row. And I'm not going to be too critical on your assessment because I can definitely see what you see as well. is that I'm unsure myself, but I will give him credit. What, you know me, I love a fucking finisher. I love a guy who goes in there and fights the finish. And credit, getting 4 finishes in a row is not an easy thing to do inside the UFC, but there still remains a lot of question marks.
Absolutely. I just need to see. I just need to see it against. I don't mean to be rude, but a decent fighter.
Yeah, and, but like few and far between in the middleweight division.
Right. Chuck him in. Let's see.
Let's make that happen. That might be your greatest matchup ever, to be honest. I think that's a fantastic matchup. I love it. Roman Kopylov versus Fluffy Hernandez next. Let's do it. Been really excited to talk to you about the next fight. And that is Edgar Chairez versus Daniel Lacerda, because I feel that you are the person that will be in a prime position with your experience and your knowledge to kind of discuss the end sequence. Look, we got 3:47 into this fight. What happened was there was a standing head and arm choker guillotine. Was it a head and arm choker guillotine?
An anaconda.
Anaconda kind of style. Yeah. And then Chris Dione came in, spoke to it was Lacerda. That was the guy. My mind is
Lacerda, Daniel Lacerda.
Lacerda. He was in the choke. He was spoken to by Chris Dione, told Dione he was fine. Dione saw the arm slump from the position and jumped in and called a halt to the fight. Lacerda was immediately responsive and argued the stoppage straight away. The commission did an excellent job in reviewing the stoppage and overturning it, and Chris Dione did accept responsibility and had some accountability after the fight and actually apologized to Lacerda. Not robbed, but I mean, Chairez was robbed of maybe a potential finish, but this is what we're going to get to the bottom of here now. There was a big difference of opinion on this on the big podcast. Graham thought it was early. Sean said it wasn't early. What's your opinion on this end sequence? Like, I mean, we won't waste any time talking about the rest of the fight because this is probably the highlight of it. And I'm very curious to hear your opinion of the choke itself and the stoppage.
It's not on. I don't think it's on. No. In order for you to finish an anaconda, you need to be bending the neck and bending the head into the forearm, and then you're going to be bringing your elbows together whilst you cinch up your locking arm. Lacerda had his shoulder wide open. Look, I'll say, if Chairez has an absolutely insane squeeze, it might have been on. It might have been on. But a standing anaconda in the position that he was in is really tough to finish. And whilst Lacerda had a bend in his spine, and there certainly was sort of a bridging of his neck, he had his shoulder wide open.
It was more like uncomfortable. Like, I've been in like a couple of positions where you've been in chokes where it's like not necessarily affecting you and your blood flow to your brain. You don't feel the squeeze on your neck, but it's like uncomfortable, and sometimes you just have to ride it out. And sometimes you have to limp your arm. Sometimes you just have to relax into the choke. So I look at it like this: if we have our arm up and in like that, what is that doing to us, right? It's kind of creating the space. And anyone that's listening, I have my arm up above around shoulder level, and you can see that it kind of creates that little bit of tightness around the neck. That's not going to help things when you're in a choke. What you need to do is you do need to drop your arm down. You need to create the most amount of space between your neck and your shoulder, and you do have to relax into submissions. That's what that's the actual kind of technique. And correct me if I'm wrong, Harry. You relax into submissions sometimes, and you do that in order to ride it out when you don't feel the blood pressure on your neck, or you don't feel that, you know, you're being choked. And the idea of doing that is to kind of ride it out, play out the position. Either the guy is going to tire his arms out or he's going to give up on the choke. And I think that Lacerda did everything right in that position. And it was just another big error for Chris Dione, to be honest. And I'm like, everyone wants to kind of belittle Dione. I think he's made some couple of really good calls inside in the octagon. And this wasn't a good one, unfortunately. The big argument was that, you know, it was too soon. It should have been left. This choke simply should have been left. We need to kind of stop getting excited and jumping in. Who was it? It it was either Kevin Peter or it was Peterson or McDonald that jumped in on the guillotine in the past. Who was that again? I can't remember the fight now at this stage, but we've seen it once or twice. Referees are getting a little bit too excited when submissions are on. And I feel that, this was a mistake by Taioni.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think...
Was I right in what I was saying about relaxing out of the submission?
Certainly in some positions, absolutely.
Yeah.
Certainly in some positions. I mean, some positions, if they have direct access to your neck and you relax, then they're probably going to make it
Well,
tight.
no, yeah, obviously, no. I would be only saying that if a choke wasn't in 100%.
Right, absolutely.
That's what I've been taught to do in the past as well.
Yeah.
But we're speaking to the master here.
And if you're Lacerda and the choke's not on, then you might be relaxing to allow yourself to think, can I take him down from here? Can I put myself in a situation where I can improve my position from here? Or he could be, as you say, just conserving energy. Now, for Taioni, he doesn't know, right? And so he has to make the right call. You talk to Lacerda, that's fine. But the check is to pull at the arm, right? If you pull it, Mark Goddard has done this over and over and over again, right? If you feel like he's going out or has gone out, you pull at his arm, flick his arm. If you get a response from it, then he's okay. If it immediately goes limp and you're just moving a limp arm around, grand, no problem, you stop the fight. But Tony didn't do that, right? Like he just immediately, as he touched the arm, he was like, cool, the fight's over. And so I also think, and maybe this is me having the sport grappling, whatever, just let the chokes go a bit, just let them go. Like, I do think that
it sounds like it's crazy to say it, but the worst thing that can happen is someone will go to sleep. Your body will protect you in a choke, and your defense mechanism that your body has when you have when it cuts off the blood and the oxygen to your brain is that you will go to sleep. And I thought Graham was correct on the big podcast, and when he said that you'll know. The referee will know. Obviously, you'll know because you'll be fast asleep if you're in the choke. The guy who's choking will feel the body weight lifted. And I felt that Graham's point on the legs was very correct as well, as that your legs are going to go as well. And, it's going to be harder. So the only thing that Taioni did wrong there was jump in. Obviously, the only thing he did wrong, the thing he did wrong was what you said. He jumped in immediately, whereas that you check the arm. You do it the old wrestling way. Check it 3 times if you have to. Check. Give me something. He was literally talking to the guy 20 seconds before that happened. And it's like you don't go out that quickly. You don't go. There was saying, Graham was kind of saying, maybe he was slipping in and slipping out. I don't even think that was the case. I didn't see. From what I could see and with my knowledge, I didn't see, and I'm glad that you had said it and kind of confirmed it for me. I didn't think the choke was in properly, and I think it would have took a hell of a squeeze for it to be finished, and just an unfortunate ending to the fight.
Agreed. I mean, look, the other side of it is if he's going in and out, well, that's fighting. Like that's fighting at the end of the day. That's on Chairez to lock a clean choke. If you lock a clean,
well, like you're going in and out of a choke is the same as getting rocked by a shot. You have to be allowed the time to recover a little bit as well.
Well, especially if you go sleep or you're like about to go to sleep and you maneuver a little bit or he maneuvers a little bit and your consciousness comes back. It's the same. Like it's just a movement of a position. And I think Graham is right. If Chairez is in a situation where he locks a clean choke and he finishes him, the legs buckle. There's no coming back. You have to let go, otherwise he just won't wake up, right? And
well, you feel the weight, like when you're choking there, you'll feel the weight on your body or on the arm as well, and you'll just know to let go. And then we see he used the example. I think it was a good example of the Ultimate Cheetah that time with Jones, where you just know you know when you're in that position when a guy is out.
Agreed.
Tracy Cortez versus Yasmin Jasudavicius in the 125-pound division. A good win, an emotional Cortez. Got the win by unanimous decision. A good fight. I thought Jasudavicius put up a good performance as well. I was impressed with Cortez as well after a long stint outside of, not a long stint. I keep saying that she was out for a long. She was only out for really about 12 or 13 months. I don't know why I keep saying she was out for a long period of time, but she came back and she got the job done. Moves to 11-1 in the 125-pound division. And I mean, I'm not going to go to the moon with her just yet. She needs a lot of time to kind of develop as well. But it was a good performance against a tricky opponent for Tracy Cortez.
I agree. I agree. I thought both of them performed really well, as you've said. I think Tracy Cortez's hands looked really, really, really good in comparison to what we've seen previously. So clearly she's been putting in a lot of work there. I thought Jasudavicius managing to take Cortez down was a big, big, big statement. Yeah, all in all, very, 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 very impressed with both of them. In terms of what's next, I wouldn't mind Natalia Silva for Tracy Cortez.
Oh, yes. Oh, you're on fire with these matchmaking here now. That extra couple of days is after work, and Harry's been thinking about those matchups, and that's another fantastic one. Look, we're going to talk about the last two fights real quick here. Charlie Campbell went in there and connected with a left hook and a right straight that put Alex Reyes out in the first round. And I want to see more of this guy. I want to see more of this guy. I was impressed with the little bit that I did see, and he's got the work on the mic as well. I mean, if this guy can go in and start performing in the octagon, we could have one here, Harry.
Yeah, maybe. He's wild.
I'm getting excited a little bit excited.
Yeah, I don't think we have one, but he's wild. He hits hard. Alex Reyes was tough as fuck.
He took some shots.
So much fucking damage before he eventually collapsed. But yeah, fair play to Charlie Campbell. Next is Paul Hughes.
Paul Hughes all day at 155. We're going to bring him up.
Get him in there.
Get him in. Get him in there. I love it. Josephine Knutsson and Mann, they performed in the opening bout of the card, and this was a tough watch, Harry.
I mean, Josephine Knutsson just absolutely fucking destroyed.
And I mean a tough watch because Marnik Mann doesn't, to be as respectful as I can be, she doesn't deserve to be in the UFC if she's going to be putting on performances like that. It was absolutely dreadful. She looked like a fish out of water at times, and look, at to Knutsson's credit, you can only beat who is in front of you, and she went out and she did that.
She absolutely fucking did. Corey McKenna, thanks.
Boom, that's it. Quick thoughts. See us out. You had said, I'm going to kind of come back on this as well. You had said, you felt the main event, it kind of took away from maybe the title a little bit by having this on free television. Dana White was out and he was spewing his shit as he does and saying it was a big successful event. It felt like a successful event. It felt like a big event. Unfortunately, the scorecards and the scorecard by Mike Bell kind of put a little bit of cold water on the event as a whole. But overall, this was a good event, and I think it's something that the UFC should look at doing throughout the year, not only on Mexican Independence Day. Let's have an Irish St. Patrick's Day card, or let's think a little bit outside the box here. We can think of many number of things. I like the little Mexican music in between. I like the kind of little nuances that they put out through the broadcast as well. And I thought it was a really good event overall. Please see us out with your final thoughts on the entire card.
Maybe this speaks to the drop in some quality, and I don't think there is really. I think this is a massive compliment, but maybe there's a level of a drop in quality in the pay-per-views. But to me, this felt like a pay-per-view. It felt like a pay-per-view. It really felt, Lupa Godinez, head of the prelims, fantastic positioning from the UFC, goes out, does what she needs to do. You're always going to kind of get a Carl Nelson, Fernando Padilla fight at the start of a main card of a pay-per-view, unless we're talking like a big boy pay-per-view. Then Zellhuber goes out. He's a hometown favorite. This is the heavyweight slot here, right? The heavyweight slot where two meaty men go and do two meaty men things. But they've put in Daniel Zellhuber and he goes and gets a win in a great fight. Fantastic. Raul Rosas Jr. Now, okay, you're not going to see him third on the bill from the top of a pay-per-view, but in this sort of way, the way that he was accepted by the crowd, the pop he got, etc., that feels like a pay-per-view. You're definitely seeing Jack Della Maddalena and Kevin Holland on pay-per-views, right? No problem with that. And then you go into the main event. Forget the scoring, forget whatever. It felt like a pay-per-view. And I think that's the biggest compliment I could give the card in the aftermath.
At BJJ_Harry Powell is where you'll find that man. I forgot to mention when we were talking about Lupi Godinez, she had the severe spotlight shone on her. And you can go over to SevereMMA.com and you can check out that article next Monday and every Monday, or last Monday, whenever you want to do it. It's an excellent article. It goes deep in detail on the ins and outs of Lupe de Godinez performances. And Harry, you'll do that every week over on SevereMMA.com. Check me out at O'Neill MMA. A couple of interviews up on the Severe MMA YouTube channel. Check those out. A busy weekend incoming with Bellator. Looking forward to it. But first, we'll have the preview show where we'll be taking a look at Rafael Fiziev versus Mateus Gamrot and what a fight that is. Until then, take care, folks.